All right, so welcome back. Friday night whiskey code. I don't have any whiskey yet, but I got code in front of me, so we'll see how this works out. Um, Long and short today, what we're going to talk about is a continuation of what we talked about last time. Let's see, it seems like my coding environment is no longer working in OBS. So OBS is playing the tricks on me, as it were. So let me go and change it to that. Click OK. Seems unable to find writer. So let's give it like something silly like the emulator, right? And then we'll go back to writer. Okay. Now it's finding writer. Okay, cool. So now my IDE is up. All right. So let's just make sure that everything else along the transitions are correct. Just the iPhone simulator, and then back to us doing live code. We're also going to go ahead real quick and test that chat is working. Yeah, look at that. Chat's working. I mean, we probably need to move that up a little bit so that it's not like right on top of me. And hopefully OBS stops screen flickering here soon so that you guys don't have such a horrible experience. I'm pretty sure that's OBS and not me, but what do I know? So again, today what we're going to be talking about is going back to a problem that a colleague of ours, Chase Floral, brought up. And what he brought up was how to do infinite scroll. How to do infinite scroll with Xamarin Forms, ReactiveUI, and DynamicData. So what we're going to be trying to figure out today is exactly that. How do we go forth and conquer on that? So I know that I want to say his name is Matt Leibowitz. I'm horrible with names, but I know him by his Twitter handle. He does a lot of Skia Sharp. He's got a NuGet package where he does infinite scroll. Another Reactive UI community member brought up that they had taken his approach and implemented it differently using dynamic data. So I'm going to show that a little bit later. And I'm going to more so point out that I'm going to not use the library to just show the bare bones of what that search would look like. And what we're going to start as a starting point is Rob Givens has an infinite scroll out there on GitHub, which basically just ties into the event. So what we're going to do is kind of go through that. And if you notice here on screen, this is kind of what we're looking at, right? So I basically just kind of grabbed the bits from this web page here. And the main thing we'll look at is that he's basically just tying into the list view appearing element. So this is going to be kind of rudimentary. And then we're going to show, like I said, at the end, a play on Matt's approach. And I'm going to probably take that approach at some point in the near future and quote unquote reactivize it. So I'm going to make it more reactive out of the box. So let's go ahead and get started just by looking at this. Like I said, we've got this list view item appearing. We're going to attach some event handler to it. And then we're going to verify that he's doing it by the item name of the list. I think that there's a slightly different and or better way to do that. But this is specific to what he was showing, and he was just kind of showing how to do this thing with Xamarin Forms. And I'm going to point out that I'm specifically using list view as opposed to collection view because the list view gives me the opportunity to make sure that if it works on list view, that it works on collection view. So I need a starting point to be able to prove that everything that I used to be able to do on list view, I can now do on collection view. Infinite scroll is what we're talking about today. All right, so we've got our timer started. Okay, so what you see here is pretty straightforward. He's taking a start, he's taking a number of records, and he's going off and doing the thing and calling the view model load. So we're going to kind of put this together pretty much the same way, but also slightly different. And we're going to do that using some reactive UI. So we'll go ahead and start probably in the view model and get into the view model bits, because we're going to want to use dynamic data here. And we're going to use specifically a dynamic data feature that supports paging. So I found out recently that dynamic data supports paging out of the box. So we're going to go ahead and prove that dynamic data is a good way to approach this paging concept. And again, this is going to be rudimentary, so we may get down to it and find out that there's room for improvement. But as long as there's room for improvement, that's what's important. All right, so we'll do a new page request. We'll start with the 0 and whatever the page size is, which means we'll need a underscore page size. Okay, so that'll give us the page size, and then we'll set that page size to 20 just because. So I've also kind of set up some of the scaffolding here. You'll notice I've got this iInventory data service. I'm using that data service as a means to load data. Under the hood, or the actual concrete implementation, is just depending upon some iClient, so some iHTTP client or something, and that client is going to provide back some coffee information, so some stuff around the what we have in our inventory. A local coffee shop may have different types of coffee, different brands of coffee, different coffee names, and we're just going to generate 1,000 of those so that we have a set of data to infinitely scroll through. So we'll just go ahead back to where we were, and just wanted to kind of show that off for a second. So we'll create this paging subject, and we're explicitly creating a behavior subject because we want the first value that we provide it to tick. So that's going to be the kind of the seed value for the subject. This is different than a regular subject in that it has that, wow, pun, behavior. So we'll go ahead and my friends that know me will laugh at me at this moment because they see me doing all of these things, which pretty much just gets down to Rodney's OCD about the way he organizes his code. So pay no attention to the man behind the mask, as it were. So we're going to do the view model first. All right, so actually, for the moment, let's go ahead and load up this application and see what's going on here, just so that we can see what point we're extending from. All right, so the showroom lights up. All right, so we're going to go to the list view. So we've got our detailed navigation, which we've seen before, right? We've just got all our nice little coffee beans. And then we've got our search, which we've done on a previous one, where we go ahead and load data in and all that stuff works. Yay, we're happy. So today we're working on InfiniteScroll, and we'll notice that this screen literally does nothing. Like, you can't even pull on it. You can't pull to refresh. The load button isn't wired up, and the search box doesn't actually do anything. So we're going to actually wire all that up right now. And make all that work. So the first thing I think we're going to need is probably like a load button so we can load in the initial set of data. So I'm using this as a way to cheat because there will be no item appearing event. So you'll have to have some data in this list in order for it to load. So I could potentially do some level of nonsense there. But in reality, what I'm trying to do is just seed the values. Hey, game constructor, welcome to the party. Good morning, Lachlan Gordon. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, please correct me. I'm bad with names. Welcome to the party. If you haven't heard, what we're working on today is some InfiniteScroll. A buddy of ours gave us a challenge and said, hey, Rodney, write this with dynamic data. So here we are. We're writing it with dynamic data. So we're going to go back to the full-on view of the code real quick so we can see what we're doing. We're going to add a loading button using reactive. So we're going to go ahead and do a simple load. We're going to do reactive command think we're going to want it to load. Okay, so like let's think about this. So if we've got a list and we don't have any specific information about the list, but we want to be able to do an infinite scroll, we're probably going to need to know the last item on the list. So list view gives us the select, or gives us the index on the item event. So we'll see that in a second. Probably actually should show you that real quick. So if I go back in here and I'll just grab, I think I have a list view. Yeah, there's a list view there somewhere. All right, so we've got some events on our list view, and we're gonna go with the item appearing event, right? So that event, let's do subscribe, get access to X. X is going to be our actual item visibility event. So if we do X dot, we actually get the item index off of it. So I'm just putting that subscribe in there real quick so I can see what it gets. So we actually get the item index off, and I want to say that we might even be able to get access to how many items. No, that's just the item index of the appearing. Okay, so we'll have to cross-reference that with what the last value in the list is, and I think that that's how we'll have to handle that. Thank you, Lachlan Gordon. Bang on. So that's probably like either British or Australian English. Definitely not American English. Yeah. And the fact that you said good morning lets me know that it's probably somewhere around anywhere between 9 o'clock in the morning and 11 for you. Yeah, Australia. That's what I figured. So Glenn, the lead maintainer for ReactiveUI, he's in he's in Melbourne. So or Melbourne, Victoria. Yeah, Melbourne and Victoria are the same. Yeah, so he's in Vic, and so I'm very aware of that time zone. So good morning, welcome to the party. Saturday morning for you. It's Saturday morning for Game Constructor. It's Friday night for me, so I'm probably gonna get some whiskey here in a minute and see how much code we can actually affect. Okay, so we see that this has the items. So I think on our view model, what we're gonna want to do is create a task. We're probably gonna want to take in an integer and return maybe a Boolean. Does that sound right? Because like, why would we want to do that? We would want to know. No, we don't actually care about a return type. We just want to return a unit. And here we're going to add in some execute load method. Okay, obviously Rodney's having a great go at typing today. All right, so that should get us the unit. We'll bring in our namespace. We'll go ahead and create our reactive command, which has the correct types, and that should now give us the correct type for the create method, where we'll take in a task here, and in that execute, what are we gonna do? We're basically just, actually, let's create that from an observable, because I just realized that my, nice, good, I'm glad Glenn is joining you. Yeah, I'm glad that he's able to cover those time zones and talk to you guys about Reactive UI. Ryan Davis is another one that I know lives in Australia and uses some Reactive, so I've had some conversation with him as well. So Rodney is going to probably do bad things here. I'm playing around with new concepts, so part of this live stream is Rodney playing around with concepts and hopefully somebody smarter than him coming back and saying, hey, Rodney, you shouldn't do that. So if it's you today, then great. If it's not and somebody watches this later, please find me. Please tell me what I'm doing wrong, because I want to be the best developer I can be. All right, so we're going to return an observable.create. And then we're going to do, in here, we're going to probably, in our execute load, the first thing we're probably going to want to do is tick our paging subject, right? Because we're going to want to do our on next on our paging subject, or should we should probably identify, before we go too much further, we probably need to identify exactly what dynamic data needs in terms of that, because probably haven't talked about that yet, have we? I'm having this thing where I seem to like to bounce all over the world these days. So let's actually go back up here and define our dynamic data structure. Or do we get it? Oh, yeah, Rodney's smart. So we actually get it off of our inventory. So the way that one of the patterns that I've been playing with is this data service concept, where I have a data service that basically wraps a source cache. And then the data service just has to emit values. So instead of having to wire up a source cache in my view model and do all of that extra, glue code where I find a lot of people write a lot of extra stuff in the view model that doesn't belong there, I'm trying to create my view models and make them as terse as possible. So everything I can abstract out, I try and abstract out. And I've been playing with this pattern. I still haven't got it down perfect because there's some quirks here and there. But once I figure it all out, I'm gonna like tell the world that this is the way you should do it because it works for me. So I'm basically just going to get back a I change set or I observable of I change sets from the dynamic data under the hood. So we can actually do this. This is going to be inventory data service, which is here. So we'll go ahead and do underscore inventory data service dot change set dot publish. So I actually learned the other week that dynamic data has its own ref count implementation. So I was actually doing like I would normally do. I was doing like publish was it publish connect ref count, and what I'm realizing, or no, not publish. Yeah, publish and then like so here all I have to do is publish and ref count, which is a very interesting change for me because dynamic data provides its own concept of a ref count. And then here I'm probably just going to do some transform, and I'm going to transform X to some new like item. Let's do, we have to probably have like an inventory item view model. Were we smart enough? Yeah, we were. And we'll pass in X to that. We'll come back to that later. So we're going to write a whole bunch of stuff and then see what happens. We're going to bind out to some underscore inventory view models. So what this does is this pattern is actually allowing me read only. This pattern is actually allowing me to generate like item view models for a list view in my view model in my controlling view model like I would. But more importantly, what it's allowing me to do is keep my data abstracted away from my view model and just allow it to act on the view model itself. So if I need to get access directly to this, I can change the composition here, right? I can introduce a variable, change my composition, and then I can do whatever I want here with this data. But right now I don't need that. All I need to do is transform this into a set of list view models. So that's what we're gonna do. This is gonna be of this type. And it's going to, and you'll notice that the iData service is basically just a data service of inventory DTO, which basically is just a coffee brand, a coffee name, the roast, and how it's packaged, right? So just giving you some fidelity into what the business domain is. And then here we'll do a dispose. No, I need to do the dispose many beforehand, don't I? So I need to do that dispose. Transform. Why is it not giving me Oh, it's not bind to, it's just bind. That's why. Dispose many. I think that can actually go after the bind. I think I normally put that after the bind, so we'll go ahead and put that after the bind. And then here we'll call dot dispose with. Oh no, sorry, we'll call subscribe. And then we'll do a dot dispose with, and we'll do view model, subscriptions. Okay. So here we need to import those missing references. We've got that. So now we've got our dynamic data piece set up for the most part, but we're gonna have to impose a search filter. This is gonna drive me crazy. So I'm gonna go over there and just fix that real quick. By fixing that, I mean I'm going to come over here where oh, okay. I see what I'm doing or what I'm not doing. I'm not providing that as a means, so it doesn't matter. We'll come back over here to the scroll view model and we'll just do it this way. So we've got a brand is going to equal to x dot brand name. We've got a coffee, which is going to be coffee name. Packaging is going to equal x dot packaging, and the roast is going to equal x dot roast. Okay, so that'll convert it to our inventory view model for us. Dispose many, subscribe. Can I put this here? No, I can't. Okay, so I do have to do it before the subscription. That's good to know. I think I'm gonna have to do, I think I want to do some level of auto refresh here, but we'll figure that out in a minute. What we do know is, okay, so we're gonna want to do dot auto refresh on the ID. So that means anytime any new ID is added to our list, we'll refresh. We're gonna actually defer this until the entire thing is loaded. I don't think I can do it without a sort, so I haven't figured. So this is the caveat that I'm going to say, publicly. I haven't figured out whether or not I can do this without doing a sort. So right now I'm just going to do a sort on the roast, and then I can get access. So here's where my paging comes in, right? So like paging, there's a built-in paging or page method, and I can give it a observable. So I can just give it the subject as observable, and now when my paging ticks, it'll tick my dynamic data and kind of do all of the magic for me. So let's see. Okay, we got to fix this now. So let's go back down here a little bit. So we're gonna want to. So when we load, we're gonna want to do our page request, right? So we're gonna tell it to go ahead and get whatever we had +1 plus the page size, because it's a 0 index array, so that makes sense to us. Yeah. Okay, so we got a 0 index array. So here we're gonna do our underscore inventory data service, right? And we're gonna do our read method so that we can read from the data source. We're going to select unit.default. And then we're going to just subscribe and get data. So we're actually going to return this, and then we're going to let the outside observer have access to it. Why are you yelling at me, telling me that I'm not smarter than a 5th grader? Cannot convert type to that needs to be I observable of unit. Then everything's happy. Hopefully somebody saw that. Somebody's paying attention. Yeah. All right, so that means this needs to come back. We need to come back down here and change this from task to observable. So now we'll create from observable. That now needs to take in what? Oh, it still needs to be an integer and a unit, right? Although I don't think I actually have to provide the unit, so we'll just do the bare minimum for now. Okay, fine. I guess I do actually have to provide the unit, so we'll provide the unit. All right, so what this should do now is this should load. So we'll come back over here, realize that we've been running this thing the whole time. We've still got some red squigglies. This is just going to be just a regular subscription, and we'll come back to this in a minute. So now all of our red squigglies are gone. We'll run the thing. We'll go back over to our simulator. So yeah, game constructor is actually like one of my RX buddies. We both started learning RX around the same time, and we've given each other a lot of help along the way. Probably him more so than me, but it's been a good go at learning all this RX stuff. Okay, so we got our simulator up, so we'll go ahead and bring up the code in the simulator. We'll bring our unit tests over so that we can block all that. We're gonna go ahead and click in list view. We got InfiniteScroll. So if we click the load button. Oh, guess who's smart? I did not load up the button. I didn't wire up the actual button. So let's go ahead and wire up the actual button. And how do we want to do this? Do we want to do it with a binding, or do we want to do it because I'm starting to, yeah, we're going to do it the way I like to do it. So I've been playing a lot with the pharmacist APIs lately. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this load button that's on the page. And I'm going to do .events to get the events out. I'm then going to do the pressed event for the button. I'm going to select out. So, okay, so we got the button that's going to be pressed, and we're passing in as a value to the command the count of the list. So we're going to have to take the list view dot item source, and we can technically just do the dot count here, but that's going to be a relatively awkward moment. So let's go ahead and cast this out to the I list that we know it is. Oh, I apologize. I think it's raining here in Houston, and we're getting all the rain in the background. So this is going to be iList, import the missing reference. Okay, so now we don't need this to get the count. So we actually get the count. So now we've got the count of the list. And then we can just invoke the command, and it'll be this x.viewModel.load. And then we'll do a .dispose with, because we want to be a good steward of our code, the control bindings. All right, so we've got the bindings. So now our button is actually wired up. So when we run it again, this time, see, I'm not sure if that rain is coming through, but like I can hear the rain through my headset on the windows. All right, so we've got that loaded up. This view, we'll go to our InfiniteScroll, we'll click the load button, and still nothing happens. Well, what did we do incorrectly? Fair enough. I'm careful to not give people's names when I know their names, when I see their handles. So thank you for giving me that permission. Trying not to, I think there's like a term that the cool kids are using these days for outing people based upon their internet name. I don't know what that term is. Why is my button not firing, Colt? What did I do wrong? What am I not doing? There's nothing in the console that tells me anything. I set this up. Let's just go ahead and see if I'm actually even getting a hit when I... Okay, so that button's not doing anything. So let's go to our XAML real quick and see. We've got a button on there called load. Load is there. The text is called load. So the button events should be getting hit. I'm doing the pressed event. So I've got a grid. All right, let's look at this. What are we not doing correctly? Because we could very easily just bind it to binding using regular binding, but I like to play around with pharmacist here when I get a chance, because this is generally the only place that I get to, because for whatever reason people don't like to get their prescriptions filled. I thought it was funny. So this is definitely the load button. This is in the constructor, right? So like I'm not doing anything outside of context. I'm giving an invoke command. I'm selecting. It doesn't need to happen. I hate to do this. I really hate to do this, but well, no, because I'm not even getting that far. And I am giving it the invoke command. I've given it the load. Yeah, it's the we haven't bound the item source to anything. That might be part of the problem. Let's go ahead and bind the item source. That's probably a great point. So let's just go ahead and be good stewards of the code and do what we know we need to do. So here, and again, I like to play with the more obscure ReactiveUI APIs when I get a chance, so bear with me, folks. This is not generally the way I would bind to an item source, but this is a way you can bind to the item source. So, oh, we need data, don't we? So we need items collection. Or didn't we already create that? I thought we did. The view model is binding out to this, and we didn't give it an actual point to bind to. So we'll do a read-only observable collection of type inventory. Getting overzealous. Items, returns, that thing, right? That needs to be public, not private, so we can bind to it. So now we'll go back over here. We've got items. So when items has values, not when any value again, where, dot, where. And I'm actually using a new font today. I'm using the mono font from JetBrains Rider. I'm actually liking it a lot on my eyes. X is not equal to null. And then we'll go ahead and bind to list view dot item source. Okay, so now the item source has a value, so it won't be as ridiculous when we do this. We're actually gonna put this down here just because OCD is a thing. So no, yeah, you were actually probably right that the item source is not set correctly. So that might be the problem, is that when we go to hit it. But I mean, like, I see that it's bound to the pressed command, so I'm getting the, oh. No, because I'm transforming in the select statement. So I'm getting back an integer. This command takes an integer, returns a unit. This should all work at this point. So if this isn't working, then Rodney is not smarter than a fifth grader, needs to sit down and figure out how to fix his life choices. Yeah. Int command. It's a public. So now we'll go over here. We'll bring the code simulator back up. We'll go to list view. We'll go to the item scroll. We'll click the button again, and still not getting anything on this page. Why would that be? Like, the page is loading. The joys of live streaming, yeah? When everything just goes downhill quickly. Okay, so let's go make sure, no, because if we had an issue with our registration, then our page wouldn't load because the navigation service would fall over. So that's not the problem. I've created my command correctly in my constructor. That's not necessarily the problem. Let's actually go take a look and see at item construction, right? So let's go look at the composition root. Let's go figure this one out, because this is going to be a fun one. Yep, no. I've created my inventory service. That's going to get created before. It's going to get created before. So I'm using some. That shouldn't be a problem, because that'll just go and get the current locator. So I've got the InfiniteScroll view model, the InfiniteScroll. I've registered my view model, which gets the data service out. So let's go look at the view. I just don't understand why that would be a problem. Because like we're explicitly. This makes no sense. This is an event. This is the events. I'm getting the pressed event. Let's see if we can do a different event. So like the clicked event, the pressed event, the clicked event. The pressed event should give me the same as the clicked event, right? That shouldn't matter. And it's a button, so the button pressed should be fine. But let's just go see if if it's the command itself that's the problem, although I highly doubt it. One of these days I'm going to be good at this developer stuff. Until then, I'll just keep limping along. All right, so I got my list view, InfiniteScroll. Okay, so my inventory data source is there. Like, did I screw something up here? Like, am I not getting a click? All right, so my view model is instantiating correctly. I'm clicking the load button and the load is failing to happen. So, all right, sometimes Pharmacist does the thing where, because it creates like those .g.cs files, I have to go and explicitly clean my solution. So we're going to go ahead and clean the solution. So FY Lachlan, when you talk to Glenn, you should tell him that he should come join me on my live stream sometime. I kid. He and I have actually been doing some videos to talk about the various parts of the framework. So those videos are going to be coming out soon, and I'll actually take this moment to pitch. Reactive UI is going to be having a conference, a digital conference, on September 19th. We're going to have several speakers, basically just talking about less hello world and more real world reactive UI. So that'll be something really good for anybody who's looking for it. So that's coming up on September 19th. The website should be up soon. And we're also doing videos on the side. So I'm going to go over here now and see if Rodney is just smarter than a fifth grader. But he's item. Okay, so maybe, how about this? Let's just go. So if this works, I'm going to chalk it up to this makes absolutely no sense, but we're going to try it anyway. We're going to do dot observe on rx app dot main thread scheduler. Yeah, we'll just see if that works real quick. Kids, don't try this at home. This is bad for them. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I mean, we're basically going to have a full day of people talking about nothing but RX, right? RX in the .NET space, full steam ahead. Like, that's going to be great. Do you tick the on next of the behavior subject? Yeah, no. Okay, see, I do tick it. So game constructor is asking, am I ticking the subject for the on next? And the answer is yes, I'm ticking it when I execute the load. What the problem is right now is this load button is not functioning the way I would expect it, right? Like, I've got my reactive command, which is public. Yep, so everything's there. But for whatever reason, it's not providing me the fidelity that I expect. Like that, I feel like that click event should happen. Oh, I know it's early for you. I want to say you're like 3 hours ahead of them, so it's probably like 7 a.m. for you or something ridiculous like that. All right, so, okay, here we go. My view model constructs. I click the button. I get nothing in my debug. Okay, so let's just go ahead and bind the command the old-fashioned way for the moment so that we're not like wasting, because I've done this before, like live on stream, where pharmacist just, for whatever reason, decides not to work, and it's probably because I need to clear out my bin. So I'm going to do that behind the scenes real quick, and then we're going to just wire it up anyway, the quote-unquote correct way, just so we're not wasting time troubleshooting ridiculous, simple stuff. Okay, so I nuked the bin and the OBJ folder. Now everything is going to have to refresh and rebuild from scratch. So let's go ahead and build and see what happens. Yes, you can. Okay, so in RX, anything that you can bind in code, you can bind through XAML. I am electing not to do it because I like to show alternative approaches. I am not the biggest XAML fan. I do like XAML, and the majority of my projects these days I use XAML because XAML is, kind of the de facto thing for .NET developers. It's easy enough to get across. So I like to show, but my personal preference, I think, yeah, okay, so it's just not going to work. My personal preference is to keep XAML stateless. So I talk about this quite often. I don't like personally to put any amount of state in my XAML. What do I mean by state in my XAML? I mean triggers is state. I'm changing state of things. I don't like those types of things. I feel like the markup should be markup and it just be markup. And then I can do all of the stuff I want to behind the scenes in C#, which is kind of the intended purpose of this code behind file anyway. So now Rodney's just going to go back and do it. But then we have to pass the command parameter, and I don't really want to do that. So let's figure out why this won't work. Pressed. Because the way that it wants me to do it, I don't want to do it. item events, item appearing. Let me see if this, at least, yeah, because I actually want to do it this way because this makes it easier for me to pass in the command. I don't want to have a hard time passing that command in. But yeah, so just to give an understanding, all right, like I could, like, you see how I have my item template bound? Like I could very easily just put the binding on the, for the list view right there. Be no different. I want this button to work, folks. I'm going to sit here and beat my head against the wall until this button works. Okay, so it's creating it correctly. The load is not happening. The load is not happening. So it's like nothing on this page is actually live, which is weird. Okay, so let's figure that out. So we've got a content-based page. All of that stuff lines up. All of my namespaces line up. My type parameter lines up. My page is a partial view. That lines up. All of my types are correct. I have an actual button named load. I got my grid. So all of my XAML is correct. All of my C# is more or less correct. So now we're going to do, the weird stuff. All right, so let's go look. And in my bin folder, or is it in my OBJ folder? I think it's in my OBJ folder. Yeah. Debug, net standard. Here we go. So here in my list view stuffs. So this is actually the file stuff that gets generated. And pharmacist should be somewhere in here. I should, yeah, see pharmacist NuGet and pharmacist NuGet lock. So let's just go and delete those. And then I'm pretty sure pharmacist will regenerate them here shortly. Yeah, because you'll notice already that all of my stuff that has events is now messed up. So what I'll do real quick, just because I'd rather use pharmacist candidly than do the binding because it's easier for when I pass parameters in. I can do it as part of an observable sequence as opposed to another way. So I refreshed, I pulled down NuGet, okay, so one restore to the project, which might be why pharmacist was choking because it had outstanding NuGets that weren't referenced correctly. Oh man, Xamarin Forms does fun things at moments. So we'll build the solution which should generate the pharmacist bits. Yeah, no, so that's the whole thing. I went down there to the debug. There's nothing writing in the console. There's nothing in the output. We've got a global exception handler. So let's go and look at our global exception handler. We've got a global exception handler somewhere. Yep, here. So we've got our exception handler. We didn't hit our debug break. So it's literally like the event is not firing correctly. And I have a suspicion because I think it might have been like a Xamarin Forms upgrade under the hood. So because pharmacist wraps the, well, wraps is probably a bad term, but because pharmacist, I'm going to use it anyway, because pharmacist wraps Xamarin Forms events in observables, if Xamarin Forms version is wrong on iOS versus Android, or in the shared project, then sometimes pharmacists won't know what to do or sometimes it'll balk. But all of that is user error and not pharmacist error. Okay, so come on, events. We rebuilt. Okay. All right, so we're probably going to do this real quick. We're probably going to end up having to do the unspeakable. Right now, we're going to invalidate our cache inside Rider. We're going to probably look at Xamarin Forms again. And in here, actually, we're going to get rid of that base IDF folder. We'll delete that because that doesn't belong there. We'll get rid of our OBJ directory altogether. And we'll get rid of our bin directory, right? So that deletes everything. So now NuGet has to do all of its thing from the beginning. It restored one. Events are back. Okay, that's good. Xamarin hasn't figured itself out yet, though. Okay. Okay, so now Pharmacist has just regenerated everything. So if that was the issue, we'll see that shortly. And if it's not, then I struggle to think how I'm going to do this, because this is how I had planned to do it as easily as I could for myself. Just so that I could pass in this parameter. I could do it in XAML. I could probably do it. I know I could do it with bindings. I just don't like to do it that way. So yeah, we'll observe that now. We'll look at the debug output. The debug won't give me anything. Yep, we're loading events. The thing is pressed. We're still not getting any values. All right. So so I actually have this code already written somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in a whole bunch of the other stuff just to see if that gives us any additional fidelity into what's going on. Because again, I know that this works. This dot bind. Why? Okay, so this is actually probably going to get us right in line with what our problem is. We're going to go back to just code for a second so we can dig through this problem. So we've got is pull to refresh, list view, pull to refresh, all that stuff, blah, blah, everything's good. We've got this, which now the binding here is awkward. Why? What's the content base page? Is a reactive content page. So maybe in this instance, I need my partial class to know about the content. No, that doesn't make any sense either. Because it's a partial class. It should already know what type it is. The view model type is set correctly. Right. Scroll. Oh, these are view model properties that we don't have yet. Okay, that's what that is. So that'll just be something we'll create. That'll be a Boolean. For now, we'll come back to that. And then this will be the search text. This will actually be our text box. So that'll be a string. Now that's wired up, right? So those two things are now wired up. And is loading is set to the activity indicator. I do not see anywhere in particular where I'm doing anything special to get that to function. I mean, I shouldn't even need this observe on, candidly, so I mean, like, that goes away. Oh, so there's a very good reason why I'm using list view over collection view. The whole purpose of this particular exercise is to implement all of the features that I would want to use in a list view, and then implement them in collection view to show them side by side with ReactiveUI, and also point out anything that I find along the way that doesn't work correctly in collection view, because I've actually seen some very weird behavior with collection view as it relates to dynamic data and loading data into the collection view. But without a working sample to show list view works, collection view works, I'm really just, complaining for nothing. So I'm literally building all of this out just so that I have a playground for messing around with Xamarin components and verifying that they work correctly with ReactiveUI, because, as we're moving towards MAUI, I want to make sure that there's no loss of functionality against the ReactiveUI framework as we move down that road. So that is a very good question. That is exactly why. Yeah, because actually, and I started at the beginning of the stream, and let me actually put that in here now for anybody that wants to see it in case they're gonna go. Where is that? Here we go. Maybe not. Maybe that's not it. Here we go. This is it. Yes, this is it. A colleague, somebody in the reactive community, sent this to me earlier this week when they found out that I was going to be doing this stream. This is a port on Matt Leibowitz's InfiniteScroll package. So in a later thing, what I'm going to do is probably implement that exact same thing that he has there with just reactive bits, like no events, no event handlers, just using reactive. So that's something to come later. But first things first, we got to make sure that the infinite scroll works correctly on a list view, so that when we go to do it on a collection view, we can show side by side how. So at this point, I'm going to admit that I am at a loss. So okay, let's go ahead and do it. This dot bind command view model. I feel broken. Like, oh, I finally decided to just give in x dot load. I want to give it the name of load dot pressed, because that's the event that we care about. And then I have to figure out, how do I pass Colt? Do you know the API well enough to know how I pass the parameter? Is it parameter? Oh, come on, Colt. This is where you're supposed to bail me out and tell me that you know everything. Okay, so that's the one with the event. This is the one with the parameter here. So, okay, there is one. Okay, so it's just the next one along the way. Oh, I got to give the parameter before I give the event name. The event name is the last one I have to give. Perfect. So the parameter that we're going to pass in here is going to be iList of list view item source dot count. Right, so okay, that's us passing in the thing. This will prove that it at least works with ReactiveUI so that we can move forward. But again, the fact that Pharmacist is not doing what it's supposed to do is very unnerving for me right now, because I use lots and lots of Pharmacist. And bind command is complaining. What are you complaining about? You want me to add stuff? No, that should work, right? Because this is the view model. This is the view model. This is the view. That's the button. This is the view model. That's the view model property. Man, this would be so much easier if I was like smart. What does this want me to do? This probably wants me to like cast it to a... Oh, of course. Control name is load. This is the parameter, which should be int is not assignable to parameter type string. Where am I? Oh, I definitely don't want to do that. Let's do it without a parameter for the moment, just to prove that it actually like clicks, right? Okay. Because this is going to become really short. That or we're just going to have to load it on initial. What do you mean I'm too fast? Which reference? Oh no. Colt, save me. I'm floundering in the RX code. Yeah. Okay, so... Okay. Oh, now I'm upset. Like, now it wants to work, huh? Get out of here. Get out of here. I call shenanigans. Oh, man. Oh, man, if I had a nickel. If I had a nickel. Okay, so now we at least see that there's data on the screen. Oh, we need to go back and fix that item list. So, you know, I talk a lot about Xamarin, and I know a couple of guys on the Xamarin team. I'm getting to know more people on the Xamarin team. I love Xamarin. But there's certain things that, like, I appreciate all their advancements, but there's certain, like, core things that you still have to do as a Xamarin developer that I'm like, why do you have to do that? One of which is the one I'm about to paste in now, right? So, we're actually going to see if this... taking that out fixes it, but we're not going to put it there. We're actually going to put it after our win any value. So the fact that I as a Xamarin developer, still have to null out the selected item on a list view is kind of disheartening. But, you know, such is life. It's things you got to do. Okay, so now we've at least got it loading, so we can see that it will do the thing. So, okay, so it's going to return. It's just going to read. It's going to page on next. It's going to read more from the data source. It's sorting. It's going to hit the paging as observable. It's going to push them to observable. So we're just going to put a, can we, oh, it's not going to let us put a breakpoint there. That's fine. That's fine. We don't necessarily need to. So we see that the paging is happening. All right, so we'll get the refresh in here in a minute. And okay, now we should be able to, okay, so the data is loaded. So now we actually want to implement what we were talking about around our item appearing. So here comes the whole purpose of the stream, yeah. Like let's get down to business. So we've got our when any value, we've got our refreshing. We're going to worry about that later. So we're going to do item appearing. Okay, so let's go ahead here. And again, we're going to use pharmacist. So we're going to do var item appearing is going to equal list view dot events dot item appearing event. And I think I'm doing this for a reason, but I may be wrong as to why I'm doing this. I may just not even need this right now. So let's actually start with bare minimum, and then let's get to the point where if we need to make changes, let's make changes. So we're going to move our load event up because we want all of our stuff that has to do with list view local to each other. Item appearing. So the first thing we're going to do is throttle. Yeah, we're going to throttle. We're going to do time span. So this gives us, the throttle gives us the ability to, like, you know how when you scroll on a list view, right? So like if I have, so let's pull up the emulator again real quick and kind of show, actually let's just show just the emulator for the moment, right? So like looking at the thing, let's see if this works. So, okay, like when I scroll, right, every time I hit this, I'm technically seeing the item appearing event, right, for the last item in the list. So I really want to be careful and not respond to every single item appearing. I only want to, so like if I accidentally do this or my finger slides too much, I only want to respond to one of those events. So we're going to go ahead and wire that up now so that we only respond to one of those events. And that's kind of what we're doing here. So we're going to throttle it. We're going to give it a time span for milliseconds, like 300 milliseconds I think is enough. Anytime we throttle, we run on the task pool because locking UI threads is a real concern. So we're going to do where. So the item appearing event gives us the item. Oh, there's a couple of ways I can do this. I can do it based upon the fidelity of the data in the list, or I can do it based upon the actual index of the item. So let's do the latter for the moment, even though I think I initially wanted to show the former. I think showing the latter is actually a good idea. And it's actually probably a simpler calculation. So we'll do list view dot item source again. And here comes the point where it's just like, why wouldn't we just cast out the item source and keep it somewhere? That's a viable thought. So we'll do dot select, and we'll select the actual item that we want, or the index. That's right, we just want the index. This is where Rodney's gonna copy and paste. Don't tell anyone you saw me do that, even though now the entire internet saw me do it. I had a PM that I used to work with, and he didn't literally think it, but he would always make the joke like, oh, you just copy and paste that code from somewhere else, right? Like, that's all you developers do. And I'm like, oh man, I wish it was that simple. Like, I wish our profession could be boiled down to just copying and pasting. Load. So now we're going to call the load event in a different place, and we're going to dispose with that control bindings. Right, so now what we're saying is, okay, so when the list view appearing event happens, we're going to throttle on the task pool scheduler. We're going to check to see if the item index is equal to the last item in the list. And then if the item index is equal to the last item in the list, we're going to select that item index. We're going to pass it into our loading command. And then our loading command is going to take the, I'll actually change that to the item index, right? So that's going to be like item index, just so that we're good. Okay, so the item index plus 1, because it's a 0 value array. We're going to keep it all on the same page because it's a list view and there's only one page. And then we're going to increment the page size, which we set to 20 earlier, but we could very easily set it to whatever else we want to do. So let's go ahead and fire up that good old-fashioned emulator again. And let's run the thing and see what happens. So in my actual implementation that because I've actually already pushed this code to GitHub, don't tell anybody. I do search in here as well, so there's the opportunity to go look at that later to see what all of that looks like. But infinite scroll. We'll go ahead and load some data. We'll hit the paging, right? So, ooh, the activity indicator is not doing what it's supposed to do. Why is the activity indicator not doing what it's supposed to do? If the activity indicator isn't doing what it's supposed to do, that means that we have not provided the is loading correctly. So let's go look at that real quick. Yeah, we didn't do that. So let's go do that. Let's go wire that up, because that matters. I'm sorry. It's also going to help us when we start doing the scrolling. You'll be able to see the indicator happen, and when that indicator happens, you'll be able to see how it all works. Oh, we did do is loading. We just didn't give it a value. Okay, so this won't be virtual. Oh yeah, that's our problem. It's in the view model base class, so we need to go back over here to our scroll view and actually implement the thing. So we'll go ahead and say, and I'm actually going to use a new trick that I learned this week, or last week, I can't remember. This dot when any, because like I write RX code all the time, and people expect me to know like every single detail, and I'm like, man, I wish. Like I know a lot, but there's still new things for me to learn, right? Otherwise, it would be boring for me. So when any observable on the is executing, we're going to go ahead and to property this name of loading is loading. Okay, I'm like, wait, I can't spell. And then we're going to do deferred subscription true. Only because we're creating the reactive command afterwards, so if we do it beforehand, it'll actually blow up. So this way I can create my observables up here, instantiate all of my reactive commands, because there's actually, so let's talk about that for a second. There's a way that I prefer to do my my view model construction, and I like to put my dependencies at the top. I like to put my dynamic data bit in the middle. I like to then do, or in the middle or at the top, like so I'll do these types of things at the top, and then I'll define my dynamic data bits, and then I'll actually define my commands and create my reactive commands down at the bottom. But that's just my preference about how I structure a view model. That's not saying that that's how it has to be. It's just how I prefer to do it, because that way everything's kind of structured in a consistent way in every single file, and you can very easily navigate around. Okay, so we just need to override. Okay, so here we're going to do public override is, no, not ID, is loading, and that's going to return this let's do underscore is loading, which is going to be dot value, which we're going to create it as observable as property helper here in a second. We're going to go back up to our to property. The property name is going to be name of. This is going to be out that thing, and then we can defer the subscription. We can remove the argument name. It knows to defer the subscription. It'll create the observable as property helper. All of these things now want to be read-only. Make them read-only. Okay, so now when I run it, my activity indicator should give me visibility and loading. So now when I'm actually loading data, it'll show that I'm loading data. All right, so we've got a list view, infinite scroll. Well, that's not supposed to be there. Oh, because we've deferred until, so it's gonna take. Oh, that's gonna be a problem. How do we solve those things? Yeah. How do we make sure that this is not bad? Defer description is gonna be true. Is loading. Is executing. Override is value. Okay, so I mean, the initial value should be false though, right? The initial value of the is execution should be false because the default value of a Boolean is false, which means, oh. Oh, I see why you did that. All right, so let's do the defer subscription equals true. All right, let's do that. And now everything will work correctly. Oh, man. All right, so I'm hitting the paging. Okay, cool. So that's weird because the is loading was executed, but didn't change. Okay, so now it'll probably change, we think. So okay, so we've got this. Pull to refresh is not actually enabled. So if we go here, we should see this thing tick here shortly. So, oh no. Okay, oh yeah, that's fine. So the item appearing is working. It's not gonna run. It shouldn't hit the next select. Yeah, it's not. Okay. So let's actually put a breakpoint here at the select just to see. So now, there we go. Okay. So now we've got the item source. The item source count is 21, which is weird, but we'll take it. And the item index is 20, which is fine. So it's not going to hit. Oh, I think I know exactly why this is doing this. Let's see. I tend to be extremely smart and overthink things at times, and that might actually be the problem. We're going to start disabling breakpoints here in a minute because there's certain breakpoints we don't care about anymore. Come on, iOS, go ahead and build. This is where I feel like I need background music, yeah. Oh well. All right, let's view collection, infinite scroll. We're gonna load at the page subject, item index. It should be loading data, but I'm not, there we go. So now I'm getting the loading indication and we're done. So now when I go to the bottom, I hit the bottom. The item index here is 3. The count is 20, so it's not gonna tick. Wait a minute. Why am I getting weird index issues? Okay. So, okay, we're going to dig into the data and see what happens instead. So let's go ahead. Instead of doing item index, we're going to do x dot item as, or do we just want to do a hard cast? I think we're probably going to end up doing a hard cast because that's probably the smarter way to do it. No, because we don't actually want it to throw an error. We'll do it as inventory item view model. We'll do that because we know it can potentially provide that. And we'll do question mark dot ID equals this view item source. We're gonna cheat question mark dot last. That is the list, right? Item source list. Yeah, okay, so question mark dot last dot ID. No, we're not gonna do. Oh, we're gonna actually give it this the type. Oh, we're gonna have to give it the type. Okay. Okay, so now it should do it. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna do it based upon the ID as opposed to how we were doing it before. I feel like there's room to make this code not look so bad, but again, this is a very rudimentary way of doing it just to prove that the thing works. Really what we're trying to prove more so than anything is that we can do infinite scrolling just by looking at the item appearing. We don't need an additional package. We've already got RX, and RX has all the power we need. So that's what we're trying to prove here. All right, so I've got my list view, scroll, loading, it's doing stuff. All right, it's checking to see that item selected. So, okay. So yeah, okay, so now it's checking the item to see if the ID, it's hitting the select statement. Is it doing work? Uh-oh. Uh-oh, did we lock a thread? Hopefully we didn't lock anything on the main thread. No, we didn't. Our environment is just being ridiculously slow. Okay. Maybe our 300 millisecond throttle isn't enough. Ooh. Oh yeah, we definitely broke something. Because we're not able to get, okay, so at least we can see that the item appearing piece is working, but now we got to figure out why. Okay, so the last item on the list, ID equals that ID. It's, okay, so maybe we need to check the values and verify, right? Because maybe that's the problem. So I don't even know if we can. Okay, so the item index here is 1. I call shenanigans. Something odd is happening here. But that's okay. Let's just do this. Let's stop this. And let's do that. The invocation is question mark dot ID, right? Just to be safe. I don't see why this would matter. But you never really know. So basically what we've done here, let's kind of walk through the code while we're talking about it, right? Like what Rob Givens was doing is he was looking at the item appearing again. He was doing some calculation very similar to what we're doing to see if the item that's being passed in is the same one that's on the last of the list. And then if it is, he's just loading data. So we're going to see here in a minute as to whether or not, because of course all this, I'm going to say the classic developer stuff, but all this code was working last week. I swear it was. Okay, so it's working now. The problem is that we're not actually. Oh, I know what's happening. I know exactly what's happening. The sort order is what's killing us. The sort order is what's killing us. So maybe we don't want to do descending by that. Maybe we want to do like ascending by ID. But then again, we're doing an auto refresh on the ID. The ID. Oh. 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 Oh man, it takes all kinds, man. So yeah, you get to see live that I make all the mistakes. All of them. Yeah, it helps if you actually like pass in an ID value, so that way you're not just getting random stuff. Because null always equals null. I think. Maybe it doesn't. Come on, Ryder, you can do it, Ryder. Okay, yeah, you're doing it. Oh, Colt, are you still here? If you're here, did you get a chance to look at that video? Okay. Okay. Now we're actually getting somewhere. Right, so the ID here is going to be some GUID, and then the ID here is going to probably be some GUID, but we'll have to actually look at the calculation to see. So we'll go ahead and hit enter. Yep, so now we're hitting, all right, so 19 is the index. So, okay, so the +1 was valid. Please tell me we're not hitting the same infinite loop. Okay, we're not hitting the same infinite loop. But now we see that our where is getting hit quite often, so we'll move our breakpoint to the select. So now we've got our list, right? So our list is here. We can scroll. We can see that we've got Dunkin' Donuts, Sumatra, Community Coffee, Neighborhood Social, Green Mountain, Starbucks, all of that stuff. And when we get to the bottom, we hit the scroll. Our page size increases. Our index is 38. The page size +20 should be 58. This activity indicator is still acting funny, but then it loads the rest of that data in there, right? So now we've basically got our infinite scroll wired up. It's kind of funky that the loading indicator is not working how I would expect. So again, I've got this code out there on GitHub already, so we'll see if this will be cleaned up, by the next time we look at it. But again, quick and dirty, you get a chance to see that, and I can also click the load button, right? And the load button will just go and do nothing. Come on. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I got the scroll. I can scroll all the way to the bottom. I hit the infinite scroll. It goes in pages, index size, goes and loads more. Why is my loading indicator acting weird? Okay. And now every time I hit the bottom of my list and I get the bottom item appearing on the screen, it goes and loads more data. So I basically am going to eventually load all 1,000 items that I created for this. Yep, boom. Infinite scroll. So there we have it. Pretty quick and dirty. Again, we used an example provided by somebody in the community that wired into the item appearing events. I'll take a quick moment to kind of talk through the bit that Mossplug sent me. Where is the or Modplug? Sorry, Modplug sent me, which is this hyperlist, and basically it implements a similar pattern to the infinite scrolling NuGet package that exists out there, and it's explicitly done against a collection view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that probably sometime in the future once I get my list view stuff all sorted. I'm going to go ahead and implement this for list view and for collection view and try and find a systematic way to do it for both using dynamic data specifically. But this gives us a very clear indication that we can use dynamic data as a way to page for infinite scrolling. We can then put our own sort filter on there. We can do all sorts of other funky stuff, transform nonsense that we do with our dynamic data. And we might not even actually need that. Now that I think about it, I may be able to just do this. But you get a chance to see that it's not a daunting task to get infinite scroll working. We're using pharmacist as our extension point to get to the item appearing. So we're using pharmacist to get to our item appearing. We're also using pharmacist to get to our item select, which is basically just taking a event and wrapping it in an observable so that we get access to that observable and then can provide an observable pipeline on the end of that observable. So, again, relatively straightforward. We had a couple of snafus along the way. Pharmacist did its wonderful thing where it likes to play games with me while I'm on live stream. We didn't wire up the search, but we've done that in other live streams, shown search with dynamic data. So this will have full fidelity search as well. I might even try and figure out if I can create like a base template for a list view or a collection view with a search and scroll and all that stuff. So all you have to do is like file new and it just brings all that stuff in for you. Because depending on NuGet packages is great and all, but the less we can depend on, the better. And we basically have just implemented this code right here using ReactiveUI and dynamic data to do our item appearing stuff. It's actually kind of a little bit better because we're not responding to every single event. So like he's having to check every single event. I'm only checking events so like when necessary. But this was good. This proves that we can do it. And then we can expand on stuff like this later. Once we get it in, and we find problems with it, we can iterate over it and make it better. But I'm happy with this initial approach, right? So in an hour we were able to set up an infinite list, and probably would have been shorter had I not been talking and doing other things. And failing at pharmacist, yeah, that was probably the big one. I'm actually just gonna take this whole thing out from here because like why even bother with this in the constructor? And then let's just put this here. Page size. Does it not give me access to that? Oh. Has to be in a static context, so it would be 0, 0 for the initial one, and that'll be fine because we're not loading data on load anyway. So this is, like I said, straightforward-ish, to the point-ish, gets me what I need. If I need further fidelity into events, I can get there. Right now, I think I'm running into a weird thing with all of this and the loading indicator, but I know that the loading indicator works correctly because, again, I've got all this code working somewhere. So we'll kind of call it a night tonight. It's been about an hour and 15 minutes. I don't have anything particular else to show in terms of this stream. So thank you all of those who joined in. Thank you all of those who came and watched and interacted. Again, we will be back here next Friday night, same bat time, same bat channel, doing the same reactive coding. So cheers, have a good weekend. If it's Friday night, get you an adult beverage. If it's Saturday morning, wait till afternoon and get you an adult beverage, because I'm going to go get me one.